Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reimagining Rituals of Worship. We are so excited for this program tonight. It's been a long time in the making. And this particular symposium, this session that we're in tonight, is sponsored through the innovation grant of the Foundations for Christian Leadership program at Duke Divinity School. So, this is the innovation grant that has co-sponsored this evening, as well as the course that I'm going to mention. For all of you who are not Myers Park people, welcome. Myers Park Baptist Church is a community of faith. We are on a journey of faith to be bold in spirit and open to all. Our mission is to be an inclusive community for spirituality and social justice. And we are so excited that you are joining us tonight. This evening came about through a project that I've been working on entitled Decolonizing Liturgy, in which I am studying and researching white dominant progressive churches and their liturgical practices. And so, a little background: Myers Park Baptist Church is a progressive faith community in Charlotte, North Carolina. In our 78-year history, we have been at the forefront of local, state, and national conversations regarding inclusivity, diversity, and freedom of speech in the pulpit. Myers Park Baptist Church is a predominantly white community. We are diverse in terms of age, sexual orientation, and gender identity, among other things. We are liturgically traditional, likened to Western European Reformed worship ideals. And as our identity at Myers Park Baptist has changed over the years, I'm wondering how our understanding of worship and liturgical practice is also called to evolve as well. So, the guiding question for this particular project is: how do we dismantle colonial theologies of worship that undermine the white dominant progressive church's aim to be racially, culturally, and otherwise diverse? And how do we embrace a liturgical imagination that aids in a rebuilding of an intercultural theology of worship that aligns with that mission? So that is the question, the guiding question that we have been focusing on throughout the Decolonizing Liturgy course, which many of you have taken. This is a 4-week course in which we study liturgical space. We study the physical structure itself. We study musical elements of worship, and we study spoken elements of worship, which include the sermon, responsive readings, prayers, the expectation of content. What is the sermon actually saying? So we've been really looking at all of that. And so a lot of you who are joining us tonight have been a part of that course. Also a part of the project, we interviewed 13 Black clergy who work or have worked in white dominant faith spaces to get their opinions and their ideas about things. And I used some of their feedback to help shape this course. So all of that said, we lead up to this moment with our featured speaker, who is not a stranger to me, but I needed to have him on here when I said I was going to do this because he was the first person that came to mind. So I want to introduce our speaker for the evening, Dr. Claudio Carvalhaes, who was my professor at Union Theological Seminary. Claudio is a native Brazilian theologian, liturgist, and artist. He completed his PhD from Union Theological Seminary, and in the summer of 2016, he joined the faculty as the Associate Professor of Worship. Previously, he taught at McCormick Theological Seminary, Lutheran Theological Seminary, and Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And he is an ordained pastor in the Presbyterian Church of the United States of America, PCUSA. A much sought after speaker, writer, and performer, Dr. Carvalhaes has preached and led worship worldwide. He is the author and editor of several books in multiple languages, including but not limited to What's Worship Got to Do with It? Interpreting Life, Church, and the World Liturgically, Liturgies from Below, which some of you have received from me who completed the course, and Liturgy in Post-Colonial Perspectives, Only One is Holy. Dr. Carvalhaes, welcome.
Thank you. a joy. What a joy, Pastor
Yes.
P. It's so good to see you. And I knew when you were at Union, I was wondering who would be the blessed people to have me. And I'm glad that the folks in Charlotte there have you, because they have a gift to have you there with them. Thank you for inviting me, Pastor Mia. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I have to tell this story. The first time that I saw you, it was at the opening ceremony at Union in 2016, and you were
Oh.
giving, I guess you were preaching, and every time you finished a page, you would drop it on the floor, like, and I was
That's
like,
right.
who is this person? I have to know who they are. I just loved I love the performative nature. I'm an artist, and so I really appreciated it. So that was my introduction to you,
That's
Professor.
fantastic. Yeah, that was for me such a joyful day, because I was coming back home. I was going back to Union, and so that was my first day. And yeah, if you have time, we can talk more about why turning the pages. But yeah, that was a day that I'll never forget. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Dr. Carvalhaes, I want you to take it away as our
Okay.
speaker tonight. This is your realm of expertise, and we are excited to hear what you have to say as we wrestle with liturgical practice at Myers Park Baptist Church.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, Mia, for having me. It's a gift to be here with you all, and to talk about that, right? Rituals of imagination or decolonial liturgy is a very hard thing to do, and this word decolonial is being used in so many ways that we actually lose the trouble aspect of it, and so to do that, it's a very courageous thing to do. Pretty much like you were courageous to do what you do, and to be with you all, the folks from the church. I have looked up online about you and searched about you and saw you singing and talking and doing things, and so I I thank God for you, because of the symbol that you've been in that place, but not only a symbol, but a place of love and resistance, right? And so for me, it's no wonder that you are doing this kind of work with Pastor Mia, and and so you all have this amazing pastor with you. It's me as a brilliant thinker and a compassionate human being, and a person with a pastoral heart. So she's a gift to you all, and I encourage you to keep taking care of your pastor. So for our time here, I'm planning to do 3 parts. So the first one, I'm just going to give an introduction of what this ritual of imagination, decolonial liturgy, what does that mean? And then the second, I will work with 3 questions that Pastor Mia sent me, and I'm already going to respond them. And then the third part, I'm going to open it up, and then we can go into conversation. Okay? So when we talk about decolonizing, that means that we are talking about colonialism, right? That we are talking about the ways in which we established the formation of many countries in the world, right, including United States. So when we talk about rituals, reimagining rituals of worship, so we have to say from where, right? To reimagine. So where is the imagination? Where do we go with our imagination, right? To start. So it implies so many questions for us, and in these questions has to do with colonialism and coloniality. So when we talk about colonialism, we are talking about John 10:10, when Jesus describes the devil, right? The devil come to steal, to kill, and destroy. And so colonialism can be a new translation of John 10:10, which is a combination. Colonialism is a combination of racism and profit, and as a way to uproot us from the land and detach us from the earth. So when we talk about colonialism in this country, we are talking about the genocide of indigenous and black people, right? And that continues, right? The new forms of colonization, not over colonialism. We just have new forms of colonialism, which is today the forms of capitalism that is markedly something that is based on greed, and also in racist forms of that are everywhere. That are, for instance, the prisons today are the new forms of coloniality, of colonialism that keeps on destroying us and uprooting us. So when we talk about colonialism, there is a matrix of colonial power. So we have to talk about power and where is the power, and it is at the center of this project. So the word colonialism is formed by the Latin word colum, cultus, and culture, right? It is about taking people of the land, the colon, the ways in which the bosom. You uproot people from the land. Where is the place of their birth and their death? And so when you uproot people, that's what colonialism does. It takes people away from their land, which means to take away from the bosom of their own structure of being. And you take away the beginning, you take away the culture, which is the way of relating with the earth and with the land where you live, and destroying the possibility of do the funerals, which is the ways in which you do your religion, right? And so everything is tied up together. And so colonialism is a way of uprooting us all. So in a way, today we all live as if fluctuating on above the earth, because our relation to the land is almost invisible, right? We can relate to the building of the church, can relate to our house, can relate to our neighborhood. It means like how many coffee shops or supermarket or pharmacies, or we talk about the infrastructure of where we are, but we never talk about the land, right? You never talk about the river, you never talk about the birds, you never talk about the other forms of life. Why? Because we fluctuate on land. We haven't landed. So since we were uprooted from the land, we have lost our ways. So when you have black folks uprooted from Africa and brought to United States, you literally take everything away. Is the imagination is away, the rituals are severed, the ways of connecting with the gods and the ways of the cosmology is all over. And when you keep these people without the land, it is a way of impeding them from rooting themselves and continuing with the land. That's what we did with indigenous people too. So when we talk about colonialism, we talk about this, we are detached from the earth. And so our rituals, most of Christianity still has rituals that are detached from the land. So I could go on more with this, but when we think about decolonizing liturgy, then it's a way of what Edward Said, this Palestinian thinker, who once said that we need to excavate our story, to excavate our own selves. And that means what? Oh, it's not only to go into your discrete sense of self, look inside and see how strong you are, or how resilient you are, or how depressed you are, or how happy you are. No, it's not only that. To excavate our story is to find out where you belong. And where you belong has to do with many modalities of belongings, right? It has to do with the land. It has to do with religion. It has to do with ancestry. It has to do with cosmology. It has to do with ways of being in the world. It has to do with language. It has to do with how we organize ourselves, right? And so capitalism has stripped that away from us as well, because there's only one way of relating today. So basically, to root ourselves again is to create different forms of relation. And that's what decolonial liturgy would be, to re-establish new forms of relationalities, of relations. And that is to go against capitalism, because capitalism has just one way of relating. It's me against you. And it is like, I'm not with you. I am against you. Because if there is one position at the church and there's like 10 people applying, just one is going to get. And all the 9 others will just be left on their own. Because I have to take care of myself. If you didn't get it, oh well. I'm sorry. I hope you get it. If we were in a different form of relationality, nobody will go unemployed. Nobody would go hungry. And that's what our worship has to do, to break with that liberal sense of community that United States has shaped us. This liberal sense that you are so individual, you have all the rights, you can have the right that you want because you have given the right, and so you do whatever you do. And that's why there is no way of living in communities anymore. Our churches are dying for so many reasons. But one of them is because at the heart of that kind of country, at the heart of that kind of colonial power, at that heart of the ways in which politics were instituted, that it makes individuals be the sovereign of themselves. I am Claudio Carvalhaes. I am the CEO of Claudio Carvalhaes, Inc. And if I don't make myself into a brand, I'm not going to get a job. And if I don't get a job, it's my fault. It's because of what? I don't know. It's because I am middle-aged, because I am Latino, it's because English is not my first language, it's because I don't understand the cultures. It's whatever, you name it. And if you're black, it's because you're black. You know, blacks are lazy and they don't like to work. And so that's why they are in the situation. Not because of the country, because the country gives opportunity to everyone. So it is this kind of discourse that organizes itself in relations in society, that we have uprooted ourselves from each other. And so it's hard to find a place where we can be together, right? So I always say when we go to worship, we should lock the door and say, nobody's going to leave from this building if you don't have health insurance, if you don't have a house to live, if you don't have food to eat, if your kids are not in school, and if you don't have what's enough to provide for your life. If you want to do a common public worship, that's what it means. Otherwise, if it is just the worship God between you and God, just do it in your house, by yourself. What changes? The problem is that we in church have a sense of community, but from a liberal perspective. I am myself, my family, and me. If I lose my job at union, and I live by paychecks, and in 3-5 months I lose my house, because I cannot pay, I'm so sorry. So it's different than say we're going to take care of you. It's funny even, right? To think about that. That worship has this sense of of belonging. Baptism, my friends, you drench into full immersed water. So you are fully baptized, and I love the way Baptists do. You fully into the waters. You go down, and you're all drenched, and you die in order to live again. But when it comes to the daily life, there's not enough water for you. Because when you go into baptism, you go fully into the house of the Lord. You go fully into the love of God. But if in the daily life you're going through a certain situation, there's not enough water for you to be placed in order to be resurrected. I don't have water enough, and my community don't have water enough, so I'm so sorry. So this is the way in which we have to think, how we were uprooted from a sense of love that establishes different forms of relationality. So when we go into this sense of decolonial liturgy, there are several things for us to think. So first of all, it's this excavating, right? And then you start to see what you're made of. You start to see who you are, with whom you are. And that is both fascinating, but it's also ugly. It's like doing psychoanalysis, like doing therapy. You go into your deep shit, and that's hard. There's so many ugly things I do not want to see about myself. And if you're going to excavate your liturgical ways of worshiping God, you're going to find things that is not quite the nicest things about you. So when you go there, you have to think about your community. You have to think about your history. About your history of this community in this place where you are. Why you were there. Who brought you there? Where are you located? With whom? Next to whom? How many people you know? How many people are you related? Are you insular, so that it can be an unity on itself? So all these questions. So then you have to start about how you are embedded in the history of this country. And how, being in the South, how you have been related or not to the history of racism in this place. And what parts of it you were fully engaged or fully against or silenced, not to create a case. So you have to excavate the ways in which you were with or against or in silence with those fighting racism. And I love the way you talk about yourself, that you've been this beacon of a liberal church that has been something else. So thank God. But you have to do your homework to dig through, to see what is really there and name it, so that you can be stronger. So that in your history you can name this year and this year, look what we did. We cannot do this anymore. And now there's something else for us to do. So when you do this part of the history, is the history of your neighborhoods, the history of your cities, the history of the United States, is the history you are embedded, like all of us are, in the history of colonialism, of racism, of despondency, of class struggle, and detachment from the earth. So when you look at your history, what story comes out of you from the rituals you did? From the rituals that you do. If I always say, I can know who you are by going to your worship. By see what you talk about, what you sing, with whom you do it. But mostly, my friends, I will know by the things you do not say. I'll tell you more a story about that later. But so when you go after this your own story, without sugarcoating it, without being afraid of it. So you have to ask, what do we have that is good and that we can continue doing? What do we have that feels so good, but we can't do anymore? What are the places that we haven't been and we need to go? Who we need to come to help us in this process? What questions we need to ask each other? If you have a love for one another, you can do this work. But if your love is frail, if you do this work, you will spread in 1,000 pieces. So I would say, don't do it.
Yeah.
If you love each other, if you have a commitment with each other, just I'm going to stick with you. Even having to listen through things, going through things, then yes, do it. But if your love is kind of shaky, is kind of not really, then just keep going, keep doing what you're doing. Because there's no point in actually doing this work. Because this work is hard. It's difficult. So then you have to ask yourselves about your neighborhood. See, church in theology means an assembly, right? Assembly. So when we think about an assembly, what kind of assembly we think? When we think about assembly, we think of people, right? So we have to think about who are we? Who are we? Right? And if it is a white congregation, own it and wrestle with it, right? But I also want to stretch you into another part, which is to understand the assembly as a much larger community of living beings. So what I want you to start thinking from now on, if we are to be rooted again, it has to be rooted in the land. Which means that I would ask you, my friends, you have to think about other living beings next to you. And I would say more than humans as well. I would say, yes, you have to be careful to look for the homeless. You have to look around for the low-income people. You have to do that. We're going to talk more about that. But also, I want you to think about the other living beings. I want to go around in the group and start to do an inventory, which is the excavation, but now the excavation in the land. So do an inventory of the trees around your church. Do an inventory of the birds around your church. Do an inventory about the rocks and the stones and the little rabbits and all the creatures around you as a different assembly. Go to the river. You, my brothers and sisters and friends, you are the ones who engage into baptism in the river, in the living waters. Go to the river. If there is a community to bless, to care, and to protect, the river of Charlotte is your church. Who are the rivers? Who? Not what. Who? Who are the rivers? Who are the other beings? That's an inventory of the patch of land. And then you see what is being destroyed. In order to establish better relationships with human neighbors, you have to learn with indigenous people who says that the first relationship was with the land. And after the relationship with the land comes a relationship with people. So I would challenge you on that. So I'm going to stop here because I'm already talking too much. And second part, the questions. Pastor Mia gave me 3 questions. One is, how do we actually create an intercultural worship experience that includes lay people as much as possible? And let me tell you something, my friends. I have wrestled with this notion of multicultural worship for a while. Always trying to see, how can we do this? And I'm not into that much anymore. And it is because we are trying just to be intercultural, just to show off that we are intercultural. So before the intercultural is the relation. And I'm gonna do a long arch to get to that point, right? But most important than the multicultural sense of the worship, it's your awareness of the political and racial component of the history of your church and of your neighborhood. And that comes out of your awareness of the people who live near you. Who are the people who live near you? A Black community, a Hispanic community, an Asian community, a homeless community. I mean, there's practical ways of doing it. Like you can go get to know them. Like when I was a pastor, I've been a pastor for 10 years. And being a pastor here in the United States, one thing that we did was to go have breakfast at 6 o'clock with the daily pickup immigrants that get their jobs at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Just sit down and bring coffee and bread and butter. Just sitting there. Just get to know them. So why you're here? Who? What are your fears? What do you hope? Where's your family? Until they trust you. So worship is always a second step. It's not a first step. It's always a second step.
That's powerful. Worship is always a second step.
Yeah, because it's a response. Because we are loved by God. So we do respond to the love of God. So the first is to see what is the love of God. So that's why I do have in the book that you mentioned what worship has to do with it. My main question there is St. Augustine on Confession, his book Confession, chapter 10. What do I love when I love my God? How do I love you, Mia, first? How do I love you?
Yeah.
And then, because if you feel loved by me, if you trust me, you not come to my church because I have a Black spiritual song. You come because you're loved.
Yeah.
I don't go to a church because they have a Latino song, a corito sung at the postlude, and I say, "Whoa, this is amazing." No, because that's not relationship. That's a song that might have nothing to do with me. It's more about them than myself. That's more about showing off of the church than what if I really matter to them.
Yeah.
So there are several things, but it's more about with whom you relate with. So, and I'll continue. Changing worship. I'm going to do a spiral on this question. I'm not through with this question yet. But second one is changing worship from top-down approach where the clergy tell lay people what to do to a ground-up approach. That's brilliant. That is you already got it. Because it's not people who know to tell you people who do not know. It is about different kinds of knowing that are interspersed. There's a reason why your pastors went to the seminary, to a certain kind of knowledge that is necessary. But that alone won't do. Because the knowledge of people is fundamental to create a balance. So the idea, when I was a pastor, the idea for me was to have a weekly meeting to prepare worship services. And we would get together and we would talk about the situations of our people.
Was it just clergy or was it lay people?
No. It was regular people. I was the only pastor there, so it was me with a group of people that I invited. So we studied liturgy and we studied the things, and then we start to say, what's your story? And then we start to have all these stories, and then we start to weave those stories into the worship, and then people start to talk about their lives too. But it is not talking about their lives in this narcissistic way, because I can't stand the ways in which we turn everything into a narcissistic move. I can't. It's just like, whew. If that is to make someone like a mirror of themselves to themselves, then like, shut it down. Don't let it happen. But it's a story that entails other stories, that entails a way of caring for each other. But it is also engaged into the larger story. Right? So we would go visit some people on the streets. We would go to where the homeless were, and we sit there and we talk with them, and then we would come back and invite them to the worship. They come, they come. If they don't come, they don't come. But then we're going to talk about what is to be homeless. And some people would say, I was homeless for 3 months. And I was on this, and then you what? I live on the streets for 3 months. You? I had no idea. Or we go, or we start to ask people, what is your gift? Some people take pictures, so we have pictures and do an exhibition, put it in the sanctuary, and then we do a whole worship with different lenses to our world today. Or when we have the ordinance of communion, we have the food made by the people. Or like this pastor who changes the sanctuary with the theme that they're gonna engage next Sunday. Well, we're going to talk about immigration, so we're going to put jugs of water as if we are in the desert. We're going to tell stories. We're going to say what the police did. We're going to ask. We're going to recite some stories. See? And now, for me, climate change is one of the most important things. And so what I will do is to actually get a group of the church, go to the river next door, whatever is the next river. Study the river. Go to the river. Is the river alive? Is the river dead? It's a being. Pray with the river. I go down to the river to pray. I go down to the river to pray with the river. Asking God's mercy to the river, lamenting with the river.
Yeah.
Then come home and create a worship at the river. Like this student of mine, we were to talk about the neighborhood. This student of mine for the Hispanic summer program, she took it literally, went to the river next to her church. And then bought a bottle of water, and then she showed it to people, and it was the renewal baptism. I don't know what denomination she was, but she got, and the water was all dirt, and she poured into the baptismal font, and everybody was just like, oh, how can you do this with this sacred thing? And then she said, and now I'm going to bless you with the water. People, literally, when she started to do this, people were inside of the pew, people start to walk out. But see, and she said, this is the river next to our church. Where does our water come from? What do I love when I love my God? See?
That's powerful.
So the last thing. Or have the kids to do something.
Yes, I love that.
I had this. I see, to be honest, me, I don't like when we take the kids away, because for us, there's a fantastic pretense. Oh, we love our kids so much, you're going to prepare everything for them. Which in fact, we are saying we can't stand them here. They make too much noise. Let them out of it. So one day I would love to do this. Okay, all the kids that stay and all the adults go away. You the adults go away. Go to those classes and stay there until we call you. And we are going to keep the kids here.
Our children's minister is loving, I think, everything you're saying right now.
See, exactly. And I mean, the pastors who take care of the kids, they are a lesser kind of leadership too, because they just work with the kids. And what to do with the kids? The kids are this blank page that knows nothing, that you're going to imprint on them some knowledge, and they do not really matter. We matter. The adults matter. And I love this church that once I went to preach, and in the time of sermon, there were papers and crayons, and they were all around me. I lost that sermon because I didn't consider them. Because we never consider them. We never do a single worship service that matters for the kids. You want to do decolonial liturgy? Start to think about other beings besides your own belly button. Think about other people, other forms of relationalities. That's the heart of it. Yes. So anyways, the last one, how do you authentically embrace inclusive worship without leaning into appropriation? Again, my friends, the medicine against appropriation is engagement, is covenant. Engage with other communities until they are so special to you, until they are so much a part of yourself that you can actually just do it.
Yeah.
Covenant. In other words, is this: until you make somebody else's culture your own ancestors, hold it. But when you make them your ancestry, then to pray is not to bring a song or a prayer, but it is to be with. To be with, it is a sense of relationality. So, my friends, I would say, you want to know about the Black tradition, don't ask Pastor Mia to tell you what it is, right? Don't ask Black folks to educate you. You have heard that. You have to educate yourself, right? You have to know. That's a way of engaging.
Yeah.
You see, but the Black church is an institution in itself. Right? I mean, I've come from a Black indigenous family, but here in the United States, I've been many times in Black churches. I've read about it. I've read about the history. I've learned with Black teachers. My advisor was Professor Dolores Williams. I try to know as much as I can and be a part of it. And I know the songs by heart because I keep listening. It's on my... It's on my daily listening. But do I know the Black church? I don't. To be a part of Black church, you have to be like, what, 20, 30 years? Then you can say, I know a little bit about this church. Even that, you won't.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not a monolithic experience.
It is not. It's where you are. What kind of Black church?
Yeah.
Right? And so it is very different. But if you learn about the history of the Black folks, if you learn about the ways in which they have lived, the ways in which they're still living, the ways in which you have to make a sense of the Black people in your life, then you're starting to move towards. Like, let me tell you two stories and I'll finish. when I was once in a white church. It was after the killing of Freddie Gray in Baltimore in April 15, 2015. All the riots, right? The city in flames. That happened, I don't know, Friday or Saturday, something like that. So I go to the church on Sunday. And this white church, so I'm waiting for it to come. Somewhere in the worship, silence, as if nothing had happened. This is what white churches have been doing throughout history. Racism everywhere. And the churches are silent.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the worship, they have this saxophone player and this pianist playing a black spiritual song. I had to walk away. That's appropriation. You don't care a thing about the lives of black folks. You don't care a thing. You cannot even pray. And then you want to sing their songs? And it's more than that. It's not only about saying a quiet prayer. It is about taking the side of the black people no matter what. I was teaching at McCormick, and the media pushes us into this place. And, CVS was burning, and then some people were wrestling. Oh, but why black people do that? As Martin Luther King said, the riots are the voice of the unheard. I said, you are concerned with the CVS burning, but you are not concerned about a bank, a city bank that has been stealing money from people all around. You don't care.
Yeah.
That is an institution, and that's okay, because that's a white institution. So to engage is to take their sides. And even if they might be wrong, which I don't think they were, I will stand by them.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to feel what it means to go against this sea of white people trashing the black people. And then you have to stand on a place that you're not used to, which was the place of either silence or a quiet mumbling against. No. I mean, every time it happens, I want your church to go out and do the worship in the public square, outside. As another black body is killed, go outside. Use a megaphone and say, "Not anymore," in the name of Jesus. When you start to do this, see, I'm circling and back into the circle now, right? If you do this, black folks will see where you are. It's not by a black spiritual you sing. It's by the commitment you have to the black folks. I'm sure, my friends, our Pastor Mia could do a lot more things in your church, but she cannot do it. You know why? Because you cannot take it. Because you're not used to it. But if you show the love and the commitment, you will hear it. You will see it. Because it's about trust. She doesn't go home saying, "Oh, did they sing a black song today?" If it was that, she would not even go back. But this church wants to do this hard work. That's what makes her trust and stay.
Dr. Carvalhaes, this is so timely because we were just having a conversation about why people of color come to churches like this. And many ways, we're not coming because the music is our cup of tea or the liturgy is our cup of tea, but because there's a bigger picture that is attracting us. There is a mission, there is a vision, there is an ideology. and the audacity often of many white progressive Christians to want their cup of tea every Sunday when people of color don't ever get to have their cup of tea. We're coming for something deeper than that.
I don't exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly it. And so if we do that, how you do all of that? Relationality. Take a step towards. Is this take a step towards. So it's taking a step towards something else. Take a step toward the river. Take a step toward the birds. Take a step toward the black folks. Take a step toward the indigenous people. What is the story of your land? Who were the indigenous people that we wiped out in Charlotte? Call their names. Tell their story.
Yes.
It's always this uncomfortable way of being. So to be Christian is not to go to a nice, cozy place only. It is about having to leave. I mean, I wish every worship we would leave and ask, oh my goodness, can I really be a Christian? This thing is too hard. So I tell my students, I hope to be a Christian one day because it's too hard. This love thing is too hard. It's too difficult. Perhaps one day I can. Yes. Let me show you one video that talks about that trust. It is about this guy who has, I think, some mental problems, and he's singing. But pay attention to the ways the church responds. Let's watch it.
Praise the Lord, Jesus in the name of the Lord. Amen. I'm going to sing Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. Oh, amazing. I want people to sing with me too. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You're me. Oh, that you Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Oh, Yahweh,
every time I listen to this, I have goosebumps because did you see
Yes.
this precious singer is fully loved by his community. They didn't shy him off of singing. They didn't take his microphone. What did they do? First of all, they allowed him to take the microphone, which is the most important thing. They let him alone. Didn't have anybody there to make sure he would do this or that. Third, the organ came right in. You see, if you know the Black church, when the organ comes, the organ is the Holy Spirit who supports you, who sustains your voice, and will modulate. Not only the song, you modulate the experience of the faith. And then not only that, you can hear the people singing.
Yeah.
To support him. Were they like getting him fast? They were not. And you know, now the Black singers, when they sing, they go with the notes everywhere, right? That's how they do. He was mimicking that because he had learned that from his community, and he was doing exactly it. What did the church did? Let him sing all the way.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, my friends. It doesn't matter what order of worship you have. What matters is you to sing with those who are suffering, with those who you want to sing with. So then the question is, who are you singing with? I will stop here.
Woo! Thank you. That I needed that video. It just made me remember who are we singing with? It made me remember just growing up in church and it not being so formal, and people would just get up on the mic and start saying their testimony. And somebody, they might have had a traumatic brain injury, or they might have had some other situation that in a different church they might not be allowed to, but in that church they were given the freedom and the space to also be the liturgy. Yeah. They can be the liturgy too. It's not just able-bodied people who speak perfectly and know all the words, right? Yeah.
That's it. That's the answer to the second question. Who are you? How you do the worship? Let people participate.
Yeah. Dr. Carvalhaes, we have some questions here from some of the people who took the course. And so I'm going to start here with the first question that I have from Molly. She says, in a class called Confessing to Plants, you said you wished our rituals would disorient us and help us be lost so that we can be found, and you described our need for an altered state of perception. Can you please describe a ritual that you have found to be disorienting?
That's a fantastic question, Molly. Whoa, I love it. As I grow older, I've been realizing how much I've been doing everything from my front lobe, everything from my rationality, everything from my rituals have to be so organized. And why they have to be so organized? Because we are control freaks. It is not, so we say that it's because of God, and yes, but not only. We have to control everything, right? And so when I am disoriented, I think I'm closer to the Holy Spirit, I would say. And how it happens, it really depends. It can be a regular thing in the worship service. Like there was one worship service that I went once, and the prelude made me cry. I don't know why. It was like, if you know Jacques Lacan, and it was just that for me. That was worship. I had to leave. I didn't have enough heart for the rest of the worship. But I think we are now in a time of shifting perceptions. And the worship is this very amazing, privileged place to help us change perception. So what is ritual? The ritual is about helping us to pay attention. But what are we paying attention to? So that's why confessing to plants, my idea was not on a perfect ritual with a plant. So my perceptions are all messed up now. And so how do I relate to the plant? And relate with the plant as a being, as a live being. Like Robin Kimmerer says that we need to call the plants he, she, it, they, not it. So for me, the worship is, there's this story from, I just wrote an article for Liturgical Theology that I finished with the story of this thinker, Eduardo Galeano from Uruguay. He has this story, it's called The Book of Embraces. It has a short story of this little boy, Santiago something, that they live in the country, and so the father takes him to see the sea, and they are through the dunes. They have to walk through the dunes, and then after a long walk, they come up to the top of the dunes, and then for the first time he sees the sea. And he is completely taken by that beauty. And after a while, stuttering, he tells his father, "Dad, help me see. Help me see it. Help me see the ocean." Oh. And I thought, I think worship is all of us asking each other, help me see. Help me listen. Help me touch. Help me feel. Help. It's like Thomas, help my unbelief. Help me because I believe too much. Help because I can't get there yet. That's how the healing helps. Help me heal.
Yeah.
And we will be each other's healers. So it is this, and worship, I wish it would be this place where it's not only about the known, but this unknown, mostly about the unknown hovering until you're able to see. So I wish our worship service places would be filled with plants, and I love St. John Divine in New York that Mia knows. They have the Earth Day. They have a worship service filled with animals. And so all the sounds of the animals while the preacher is preaching, you can barely hear the preaching because there's a cat, a dog, a parakeet, and another one that's just this noises of animals. That's when I love the most, because that is my perception is taking off, and then I have to say, what do I love when I love my God, when I listen to all these animals' voices.
Oh, thank you for that. I needed that. Maybe next year for Earth Day, we can, Pastor Ben, let us put some plants in the sanctuary.
Yes. Let them breathe.
We'll see about that. I have another question coming in from Beth. Beth says, Dr. Carvalhaes, how in heaven's name do we really get more diversity in worship, looser worship, truer worship, in a place with such a culturally, historically stiff, socially traditional, and architecturally defined church such as ours? That was a mouthful.
Ooh, Beth. How many months we have for this?
Right. To the
Beth,
answer.
I think you know, we are in different places, right? We're always in different places. And some people grew up with a very stiff worship, which for them is the frame. And some people like more looser worship. So I think more than search for a true worship, I would say how to love each other better. Because if I love Mia can sing whatever she wants, and I'll love her. And I will learn to be grateful. But then next Sunday I will sing. And Mia might not like my song whatsoever, but she loves me, and she will learn. You know, in this battle of what kind of worship, I think all of the order of the worship are fine, are wonderful. I have preference more of some than others, but that's my preference. But how do we take this step towards each other, both to keep the service as stiff as it has been, and take the step to someday try a much looser one, and learn to do this without rolling our eyes? I was with a church once that I went to preach, and there was two services. One for the traditional worship that we had all of the vests, and we walked, and the choir and the organ. And right after that, we went to the fellowship hall, and where the tables, people were having their coffee, and so I took off all the clothes, and so at the first one we said, "The Lord be with you, and also be with you." The other one was like, "Hey, what up? How's it going?" So, but perhaps that's one way. But for me, I was asking myself, can they visit each other's worship and understand that worship is also important for the two groups? So if we take a step towards each other, I think we can have different kinds of worship. We can have the same worship, but it's more about how do we learn with each other and expand. We have to keep expanding ourselves and changing our perceptions. But I think this step towards each other, which is the hardest thing to do, it's painful. It's not easy. And yet, you know, sometimes everybody's stupid sometimes. So we get into some of this meaning, somebody's stupid. And what can we do? And I am stupid today, but perhaps tomorrow will be you. And so
this is along those same lines. We have a question from Bonnie. Bonnie says, if worship is the second step, what is Myers Park Baptist doing as our first step, or what should we be doing? Is that the same thing, leaning into relationship and leaning into loving each other, or taking the course? I don't know.
Well, that's great. I think taking the course is the first step, right? That you're doing. What you're doing right now, it is what you do is here, and so what you're doing is to have a distance to say, oh, this is what we are doing. And so is this inventory. What is inside of this? Oh, what is inside of this? Oh, it's a tradition. So it's a Baptist tradition. It's a Baptist doctrine. It is this way of doing worship. If you go through the bulletin of the church, you will see that the worship has changed so much. Every church is like that. So it's not like, oh, you've always done it this way. This is nothing. There's never the truth in any church. There's no such a thing as we always been doing this, right? So we look back and say, so this is how we were, who we were. And now this is who we are. And so it is about taking an inventory on the tradition model. So what is tradition? Tradition is not to keep something equal from yesterday. No, if you do that, you are killing tradition. Tradition has one aspect of tradition that means betrayal. A tradition can only continue if you betray it. So if to be traditional is to change.
Ooh,
it is a difference between being a traditionalist and a fundamentalist. A worship fundamentalist is the one who cannot change anything. A traditionalist is one who's fine with whatever the congregation decides to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you should aim at, that you do. Well, in terms of action, you have to think about that, right? You have to think about this in order not to start doing things. So I think what you do is to actually look at the actions now. You are looking at that. So this decolonizing liturgy is to look at the actions you do now. What are the actions of the church? It is not what you're going to do. You start what you're already doing. Then do an inventory of this doing. And then say, okay, we need to expand this doing. That's the step towards. That's the new relationalities. And that means stop doing some things, start doing other things, and keep other things. How are you going to do this? You all have to decide.
Yeah.
And sometimes, but you say, but 80% of the church will not like to change anything. So, yeah, live with it, but then say, okay, if we don't live that, at least once a month, you're going to do something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying, you know that the church, I don't, but there has to be space where everybody has a voice.
Yes.
And everybody loses and gains.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and Bonnie, if anybody who's asking, like this, I want this to be coming from you. You are the liturgy. And, so you get to, take action and decide what the actions are. I mean, outside the church.
Well, I think it's a double bind, Bonnie. It's always who you are and who you are, not only to your church, but who you are to the community. So I would say there's several things. As I said, one, go around the church and do an inventory of the landscape, of the trees, of the plants, of the animals, of the patch of land. Who are there? Bring into the worship. Sing, put the sounds of the birds around you. Do a silent time. Take people outside of the building to listen to the birds. Bring pictures. Say, oh, we have around us 15 kinds of rabbits. Just one thing. The other thing is go around your neighborhood. Who are your neighbors? I don't know. Go to another church. Is that a black church, a Hispanic church, a Catholic church? Go there and start a relationship. Hey, do you want to do a worship service together? Mm-hmm. Establish meals. Do meals. Talk. Spend 6 months talking to each other before you do anything. Learn about each other's stories. Oh, there's a black church. Oh, talk about that. What do they do and why? There's an artistic community. Get involved with the artistic community. There's here next to my house a community that takes care of the river. I joined the community because I want to talk about the river. Go to where the homeless people are. Do they have shelter? What is the city doing? I mean, I know you cannot do all of that, but I mean, choose something outside of the church and start doing this movement between the inside and the outside, because this wall that we established is an illusion. There's no wall. Oh, we have stained glass windows not to let the world come in, but everything you do inside of the church has to do with the world.
Yeah.
See, look at your budget. See what you're doing with it. Or you don't have much money. So create a group of people who will connect with this group of people and linger there for a while. I don't know, Bonnie, just thinking out loud.
She says, thank you. Dr. Carvalhaes, I have one final question for the evening, and you might have touched a little bit on it, but I do want to post it because I think it's important. And for all of you, also just to promote your book, Liturgies from Below.
Yay.
This person has read part of your book, and so this is from Molly again. Molly says, in Abingdon's introduction of your book, Liturgies from Below, you spoke of liturgical solidarity, and you said, your heart shapes my heart. Your heart shapes my heart. Please talk to us about how you have experienced this liturgical solidarity. How did it come about?
Ooh, oh, we needed so much more time. But let me say, from this book, there's a chapter here, Praying in Your Own Community. And in that chapter, I said, prayer is a circular movement. And here, Bonnie, there's doing this work where you are. And so you have 15 steps of how to actually do things outside. So if you read pages 12 to 18, there's strategies for you here. Search, bring people, imagine every time you do this. So there are things that then adjust to your own ways. So another thing that you can do actually is to get this book and go around your neighborhood and start to check the racist institutions around you. School names, street names, buildings and statues, and walk around. Read this book together and walk around and see the racism around you. This is the way of getting to know your own patch of land, right? And here another promotion. If you want to read more about prayer, there's another book that came out, Praying with Every Heart, and there's also a way of doing things together. But anyways, this book came out. Thank you for the question. Was it Molly who asked?
Yes, I can put it back.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. It was like this book happened in four continents, right? It was done in the Philippines, in South Africa, in Jamaica, and in Italy. And with them, there was 25, 30 people from the whole continent, first on Asia. We came to the Philippines, and then we talked to the local church, and the local churches took us to one place. We lived for 4 days in these communities, 3 days in these communities, and we just listened. And we just listened, and we just listened. And then we would go back together with some of the people, and then we'll sit together and create the prayers. So what happened was that we, through the prayers, the rituals, the songs, the healing services, the art, we engaged this community so deeply. So we were almost like a part of it. Oh yeah, but you're only there for 3 days, and yes, all of that is true. But there was something about listening. Then we created different vocabulary. And here's the key point of this. is to say that the grammar of our faith tells us what we believe. So what is the grammar of your prayer? That's why I told you that if I go to your church and listen to your prayers, I know who you believe and what you believe and who you are. Because the grammar of your prayer tells me who you are. So when you go to your community and start to bring the voices of your community, of the trees, of the river, of the homeless, of the Catholic Church, of the Muslim community, of the Black community, of the Hispanic community, whomever, and create a different forms of prayer that you pray on Sunday, that is liturgical solidarity.
Mm. The grammar of our faith tells us what we believe.
Yes.
Yes.
And who we are.
And who we are. Yes. Dr. Carvalhaes, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you for sharing time with us and energy. And I love your passion about this topic.
Thank you. It's such a joy to be with you all. I wish we were all together, because then we could eat something together and extend this. But this is a good way together these days. Thank you for all of you who asked questions. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, me, again, for inviting me. What a gift to be with you all. And I bless you with whatever is ahead of you. It's not easy, but hang on to each other and bless each other and love each other and create a liturgical solidarity among yourselves.
Yes, yes. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We will see you at our next virtual event or in-person event. So go to our website and follow us on social media so you can stay abreast of everything that's happening in the life of our church. Good evening.